Hello world, I'm Mandy Mundo, and this is actually a castle in Wales, but that's not the meaning for this video. This is actually a video of the costs associated with our trip to Africa. So the trip was to Tanzania mainland for a safari, and then we did the island of Zanzibar at the end. The trip is for 2 persons, and I have different costs in euro or dollars or Tanzania shillings, just depending on how we paid, but don't worry, I'll tally it all up at the end. So let's get started. So let's start with the pre-trip costs first. So before we left, we had to put Otto in daycare, so that was 150 euro. And then to get to Tanzania, everybody actually needs a tourist visa. If you're coming from the EU, your visa, I think, was only $50 a person, but because we have American passports, our visa is more. It's $100 per person, and I think that's because I could use it for a year, I think. So if I wanted to go back to Tanzania in the next year, that's why my visa is more, but we're probably not going back to Tanzania in the next year. So anyway, we had to spend $200 on visas. And then Tanzania at the time, this trip was in February 2022. So at the time, Tanzania required a PCR test, regardless where you were coming from, whether or not you were vaccinated, and they didn't accept antigen tests. So we had to take a PCR test. And then our flights from Germany to Tanzania round trip, I tried to find the best deal possible, but unfortunately it was about $700 a person. The parking at the airport, so we flew out of Frankfurt. The parking for 8 or 9 days was $67. That's a pretty good deal. I usually try and find the cheapest parking, or I'll look, hey, what's more cost effective, parking there or taking the train there? And usually parking there is more cost effective. So this trip was 8 to 9 days long that we were in Tanzania. The food at the airport, so we usually eat something before we get on the flight. So we had 25 euros worth of food at Frankfurt. And then when we had a layover in Ethiopia, we had some breakfast there, so 1,700 Ethiopian. First on the trip was the safari. So we got there the day before the safari started, which I highly recommend depending on where you're coming from, just so you could sleep at a hotel the first night and kind of get used to the time change. So we got there and just stayed the first night in a hotel, and that was only $67, so pretty cheap. And I learned this, I think, before we left, but Tanzania does a lot of tips. So when we went to the airport, I exchanged money, euros for Tanzania shillings, and the lady at the exchange counter gave me like a bunch of small bills instead of big bills. And I was like, man, what am I going to do with all these small bills? I have this full stack of Tanzania shillings. And then I realized, oh, that was really smart what she did, because now we had all these small bills that we could give as tips. So word to the wise, if you're going to exchange money, make sure you get a lot of small bills. So the tips for transfer to the hotel and luggage, 15,000 shillings. So the airport hotel included the transfer, but I just tipped the driver. So I know that looks like a lot, but 10,000 shillings is about 4 euro. So it's not a lot, but it does look like a lot. The dinner the first night at the hotel, and then we had to pay like a levy tax or a tourist tax. And then the safari itself, which was 4 days long, was $800 a person, but that included everything. That included your transportation, entrance fees to the park, all the meals, the driver himself, and then the lodges that you stayed at. So in total, you think, okay, it's $200 a person for a full day's worth of activities and excursions and everything included. So I thought it was a very good deal, and we ended up having a private tour. So if you would have bought a shared tour on the safari, it likely would have been a lot cheaper. I didn't need a private tour, that's just the itinerary that we liked. So that's the one that we got, and it ended up working out really well, because we're not the ones that stop and take a billion pictures, you know. I do take a lot, don't get me wrong, but I'm not gonna stop and get like a bunch of different shots of something. So I think our driver was probably very happy about that. But if we were with other people who were like that, I probably would have been very upset that we were stopping a lot to take pictures and videos and stuff, whereas I just took pictures and videos along the way, like as we were moving. So about $1,600 for the safari, and we had a great time. So the food along the way, like I said, meals were included, but we stopped the first morning at a gas station to get like snacks and stuff. So I got some nut mixes and crackers, you know, just things I could eat in between our meals. And then tips along the way, so that's tipping the other tour guides we use, like the Bushmen and the Maasai village people. So tips along the way. And then we tipped our driver at the very end, and we tipped him in dollars. I asked him, I said, do you want us to tip you in dollars or shillings? And he said, it doesn't matter to me because I can just exchange the dollars, no problem. And I'd rather tip him in the dollars because we had some extra instead of using my shillings and not having enough shillings for tipping people for other times throughout the trip. So I tipped him $100, and Jeremy read that a good tip for a driver, I think, is like $10 per person per day. So I tipped him basically $12 per person per day. And like I said, he was great. Gave us a lot of good information, put up with us. So I tipped him very well, I think. I got a souvenir, some giraffe salad tongs at the Maasai village. And then Jeremy had needed some aspirin, so we bought some aspirin for him. And then I had gotten bit by like a wasp, so I bought some creams and pills at this little pharmacy. It was very cheap, as you can see, for the whole drugs that we bought, you know, only €4 or 11,000 shillings. But I had to go to the doctor later on, which you'll see later. And then I got our round trip ticket. It was from Germany to Tanzania mainland, and then from Zanzibar back to Germany. So I had to find a way to get from Tanzania mainland to Zanzibar. Well, I was gonna do the ferry, but I waited too late to book it, and it was sold out, which I was surprised at. I know the Greek ferries sell out right during the tourist season, but I didn't think the Zanzibar ferry would, but it did. So I got a flight instead. So $59 a person for a one-way flight from Tanzania mainland to Zanzibar. And then we spent 4 nights in Zanzibar. So our hotel was about an hour away from the airport, and I let Jeremy pick the hotel. You know, we look at it based on accommodation, what's there, and not necessarily like location. So we didn't stay close to the airport at all, so we definitely had to pay for that in transfers. But the Clove Island villas where we stayed, Jeremy really liked it. It had a pool, it had access to the beach. There were only about 6 or 7 villas, I think, so it's very small. And then it had food there, and the food was very good. So for the villas, for 4 nights, $600 to $700. And then I had to go to the doctor. I just couldn't take the wasp sting anymore. I was in a lot of pain, my hand was swollen. So I had to pay for a taxi to the doctor, and then the doctor visit, they only charged dollars. So I had to pay $315 for the doctor visit. They gave me a shot, some more medicine, and but fortunately my insurance covered it, so I submitted a claim later, and I got paid back for it. And then the food at the hotel, this is where I think we could have done a little bit better. So we just decided to eat all our meals at the hotel, and that was lunch and dinner. Breakfast was already included. So if we weren't out on an excursion, we were eating at the hotel. So we spent a lot of money just in food. And then the excursions that we did. So we did a snorkel, lunch, turtle excursion, like full day tour. So it includes snorkeling and then barbecue lunch and then the turtle conservation. So that was $185, and that included the transportation and the food. And then souvenirs I bought at our next excursion. So we did Stone Town and Spice Tour. So that was $100 for 2 people. I bought a magnet, soap, and some spices on the spice farm. And then during the Stone Town tour, we went to the Freddie Mercury Museum. I just had to go. It was the house that he grew up in, so I thought that was pretty cool, just the location. And then we had to buy our own lunch during the Stone Town tour. And it was really funny because when we went to pay, the lady brought the bill, and I said, excuse me, like, we didn't order these things. There's more food on here than what we ordered. And she said, oh no, your tour guide, it's his lunch too. And I was like, what? So I guess lost in translation, I didn't realize that he was, we were paying for his lunch as well. So I just gave him like less of a tip because I bought his lunch. Again, it's not a lot of food, but it was just weird that that's how it happened. I don't know if that was standard practice or if he asked me to buy him lunch and I said yes without knowing I said yes. I have no idea. So I only spent 24 euro for 3 people's lunches, so not a big deal, but it was just kind of a weird situation. And then you had to pay to view the slave monument, and then the tips for Tanzania in total. So that's like our hotel, the tour guides, all the transfers, the taxi transfers and stuff. So in total for tips for Tanzania was $112 or 112 euro or 280,000 shillings. So it looks like a lot. And then on the way back, I had to get a COVID test because Germany, you have to have a test or a vaccine card. So I had to get a COVID test, which is about 24 euro at the airport, at the Zanzibar airport. And that was a little stressful too because their machines had gone down that day, right? Their system had gone down. So there were a lot of people trying to get a test and they had to handwrite the results. It was just very stressful, not knowing if I was going to be able to get back on the plane or not, but it was fine, turned out fine. And then while we were at the Zanzibar airport, I bought some more souvenirs, coffee, chocolate, coffee for Jerem, not for me, coffee, chocolate, a magnet, some samosas, and then some dried mango and water. So in total, when you add up the dollars, the euro, the Ethiopian money, and the Tanzania shillings, it comes out to about 5,700 US dollars for 2 people, 8 nights, including everything, even the pre-travel costs. So that is a lot, but I looked back at my other video for Italy, and it was about the same amount as Italy and the same amount of time. And it would have been a lot cheaper if I found better flights, if I didn't do the private safari but did a shared safari, if we didn't stay at that fancy villas in Zanzibar. So I definitely could have made it cheaper, but Jeremy really likes accommodation and making sure we stay in a nice place. So and we had fun. Like I said, I'm never ashamed or feeling bad about the money I spend if we have a great time. So it was a lot of money, and when I start traveling on my own, hopefully next year, when I do some solo trips, I'm going to be budgeting a lot because I don't have to stay in fancy places if Jeremy's not with me, or I'm all about, you know, going and eating at a food truck, spending like a couple dollars at a food truck and eating lunch that way, whereas Jeremy wants to sit down for every lunch, where I like to eat kind of on the go and spend less money. So I will make up for it. My budgeting will make up for it probably on my solo travels next year. So that was our trip to Tanzania. So 8 nights, 9 days, and lots of fun. If you haven't looked at my videos already for the whole trip, they're already out. So the safari, our Zanzibar adventures are already out there. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this helped you on your own planning of your African safaris. Bye guys!